is that's why you always are in the frontier of technology.
Right.
And when you're in the frontier of technology, you're also in a very big management challenge.
Sure.
And that's what happened at Titanic.
Yeah, yeah.
At some point, the film started going over due dates, over budget.
Sure.
What
Well, I
did
had to
you
look.
do then?
I had to look at the total set of values of the enterprise. You know, what were we going for? There was a point where I suppose we could have throttled back, but we wouldn't have delivered on the epic promise of the film. And my instinct was that we would best protect the investment, meaning the money that the studio had spent to date, by playing through and following the vision. And you know, fortunately, they listened to that. They believed in the film, especially toward the latter part of shooting and into post-production, when they started to see the footage and they got to get a sense of excitement about it. But you know, it's interesting, as a filmmaker, I've got bosses, I've got people I report to, and I've got a big team that works under me. And so I have to manage up and manage down, you know. In the managing up, I have to be very transparent about what's going on. If there are problems, I need to make sure that they hear about the problems first from me. I need to be proactive about how those problems are solved. I always come in and say, okay, here's what's going wrong, here's what we're doing to correct it, here's when you will see change, and this is the milestone by which you will know if the things that we're doing to change are working. And we had the same issues on Avatar, working with the same, you know, management team above me. They weren't the same problems, but they were problems of the same kind of magnitude. You know, we had technology that wasn't working. We had unforeseen issues with technology. We had unforeseen issues with visual effects and so on. And so, you know, I would have to come in and I would have to, you know, I'd have to manage the problem, manage the crisis for them, so that they would feel confident that we had our arms around it.
That was managing up. What about managing down? And think again at Titanic at some point.
Well, Titanic, you know, managing down on Titanic, everybody pretty much knew what the problems were. They were mostly physical, logistical problems and that sort of thing. I think it was more of an issue on Avatar. Avatar were a lot of unforeseen problems, and we were really in new territory. You know, Titanic was just big. It was a lot of big physical production. On Avatar, we were really in new territory, and we had to think our way out of the problems that we had put ourselves into. And sometimes we'd stop in the middle of a production day, not so much when we were doing the live action shooting, but when we were doing the virtual capture, which was about 2/3 of the film. We'd stop and we'd say, okay, we've just hit a wall. What do we do about this? So we'd just clear the stage floor, set up a table. The team would sit around the table, in the middle of a production day, and we'd think about what we had to do to make the system work, because we were creating a system from scratch. Let me give you an example.
Yeah, and lead us through that process.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So we had begun to do capture, we had begun to do scenes with actors, and we realized that we were shooting on a flat stage floor. But the jungle itself is contoured, it wasn't flat. And of course, a virtual landscape cannot support an actor's weight because it doesn't really exist. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros, right? So we had to create a terrain system, a physical modular terrain system that would map exactly one-to-one with the computerized terrain that was overlaying it, so that their characters would appear to walk on a landscape. That didn't exist before. We had to come up with it. It seems obvious in hindsight, but it hadn't been anticipated because there was just too much coming at us that was new. So a good part of it is dealing with the psychology of it. You know, dealing with the psychology. We were working with a young team. Average age was probably 23, 24, right? So I would say, guys, this is great. This is why I'm making this movie, because I want these moments where I don't know the answer, and I don't know the answer, and you don't know the answer. And we enjoy. So it was making the problem solving fun, making it the challenge, and so they would live for that challenge. And I mean, people stayed. They wouldn't go home. They'd stay all night. We had to send them home. They were so enthusiastic.
And describe the dynamics. You have this table. You have the people around it. What do you see?
Throw
the problems. Throw the symptoms. Throw.
Right. Exactly. Okay. We're here to crack a problem. First of all, let's define the problem. Okay, it's this or it's that, whatever. And I'd go around the table and I'd ask for suggestions, and you have to listen carefully to what people are saying, and then we'd just come with a synthesis from that. You know, it was never formal, you know, because you're working with a group of creative/technical people, and the creatives and the technical people are meshed together into one team, and a good idea will come from anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter. So there was no sort of hierarchy. And you had to encourage people empower people to speak. Because some people are shyer, or they don't think that their idea might be the one that solves the problem. So you have to empower people to speak in that context, and that there's sort of no dumb answers and no dumb questions. It's really important that you create that psychological matrix for the meeting, for the problem solving.
So actually, your success as a marketeer is not that you understand a specific need, but rather a human need of seeing new and experiencing new stuff, and going beyond that.
Well, I think it's an expression of how I feel and the things I like in a movie theater and the things I like to see historically. It's also recognizing certain milestones in my own work and building on that basis. So, for example, we're here in Radio City Music Hall. The last time I was in this building was in 1989. We were premiering a movie called The Abyss. Now, the film ultimately was not one of my most successful pictures, but it had a couple of scenes in it that had a phenomenal impact on the audience, that involved this kind of liquid water being that could form faces and so on. That was very early CG. So we saw the power and the impact on the audience of seeing something that was very dreamlike, not possible. I like to use the term surreal in the sense that it looks real, but it can't be real. And so that drove me into a business decision to start a visual effects company based entirely on the idea of creating CG characters. So we saw a recognized success. We built on it with Terminator 2. Then I started Digital Domain with Stan Winston, who is another incredibly creative, master creator of creatures and characters and that sort of thing. So we worked together to start Digital Domain, but we were moving in a funny way, very methodically, from things that we had done and proven up till that point. They seem revolutionary when they get to the audience, but they're not to us. They're incremental in a way.